I start in here, and then after just reading of some of Osensei's words, go into the living room. So this is home sheltering, and then the home becomes the dojo. And one of the interesting things is you become your own dojo, okay? Which gives you a lot of freedom because you don't have to get in your car and battle traffic or whatever it is. Wherever you are, that's where you train. Okay, so in a lot of ways, do is the way or the path, and jo, place where the way is practiced. Okay, and so what we're saying a little bit is as we go on, you become the dojo. And that's a kind of sobering thing right there, because you have a place where there's a schedule and everything, and that's really good. And then we're in a situation now where that place is on hiatus because of the coronavirus pandemic. I want to say epidemic, but it's a pandemic. And because of that, we're not able to have a schedule. We do have a schedule now, but it's an online schedule. Okay, so the questions are important. And there are things that otherwise, you see, you or me or whoever it is, the path of Aikido is very vast, very broad, and very deep. And quite frankly, a lot of times, just simple, how do I start? What is this? What is that? Those are really important things. I remember when Linda Holiday Sensei, myself, and Mary Honey Sensei was there. We were in Japan. This was basically goes back to my first year there, 1973. And the training was a training. There's very little talking. The only person that really spoke very much was Hikizuchi Sensei. And instead of doing technical explanations of what went on, he would lecture. He would lecture about Aikido and its larger sense, and he basically followed Osensei's model. So he addressed a lot of things about the culture through Shinto, in the Shinto mythology. So what would happen though is a lot of times the other instructors, Anno, Tojima, Yanase senseis, they would, mainly it was Anno sensei, Tojima sensei, they would drop by where we were staying, and a lot of times we just have a discussion, sometimes all the way through the night. And so that part of it, the actual verbal. Now, how much of that we got? I mean, it was nice when Mary Heine Sensei was there initially because her Japanese was basically native speaker level. So, and Linda Holiday Sensei picked up the Japanese very quickly. But we all, as we kind of progressed, we started to be able to ask questions. Initially, you have questions, but you can't ask because there's a language barrier. And so here, what you also run into sometimes is there's a language barrier, because there's, in Japanese, called a senmongo. It's a specialty language. One thing Hikizuchi Sensei did, he spoke an awful lot of Osensei's specialty language. Osensei spoke in ways that were very difficult, even for Japanese, when his accent was, accent from the southern area. And you go 5 miles and there's another accent. And if the natives of that area want to speak and they don't want you to know, even though you're Japanese, they would just go into dialect. And so, part of that, just even within a culture, Aikido has a similar thing, depending on who you work with. Robert Nadeau Sensei, for example, he creates his own language. And the meaning of a word may be different in 2 weeks. I run into that because we talk fairly regularly, so, you know. And so that part of it tends to be problematic, but on the other hand, you know, the actual sense of things. One thing that I, you know, just in terms of a more American thing, asking questions, the mental side of it, the study part of it. There was a man named Mike Krukow, who was a major league pitcher, and now he's a broadcaster for the San Francisco Giants. And being a pitcher, he knew a lot about hitting because his job was to get the hitters out. And so when he was talking about hitting, he said this, and I've always remembered it. And he said, if you think, you're in trouble. And if you don't think, you're in trouble. As sort of a very Zen statement for a national pastime here. And, you know, if somebody's throwing a 95 to 100 mile an hour fastball, the second you think, you disturb your own rhythm. So there's almost no way you can hit a 95 mile an hour fastball if you're thinking. So you hone your craft to where your mind and your body and your will, so to speak, are just very polished. You can hit that 95 mile an hour fastball. That's the first thing that happens in baseball, is if you can't hit that, you're out. Everybody just throws that speed, and if you can't hit it, you can't play. And so you hit it. And then they start throwing breaking pitches. Curveballs, sliders. Okay, and if you can't hit that, you're out of the league. And then you learn how to do that, then they start changing speeds on you. And then what happens is, maybe you can do that, then they start changing locations, in, out, high, low, in the strike zone. And if you can't handle a certain type of pitch, that's all you see. And so I think his point was, you are developing yourself to kind of a Zen state, but then you have to keep evolving. And all of a sudden you can't hit the low outside slider, that's all you're gonna see. So at some point, you have to learn how to hit it. Then you learn how to hit it, and then you realize that somebody can throw a high fastball by you inside. And then there's a pattern. In other words, a good pitcher has a sense where they're going to get you out. If they're a starter, they may face you 4 times in a game. They can't, unless you have an obvious weakness, they have to keep moving. And the hitter has to say, okay, he's trying to get me out this way. He's trying to get me out that way. Now I'm using he because I think there are women that play baseball, but you know, major league, professional baseball, basically it's just all males. I'm using he right there. But that part of it is interesting. In other words, you know, there's an analytical part. And there's also what you would call just the moment. In the moment, there's an integration. And then the situation may change because the pitcher may change his or her approach. And assuming you can do everything, you have to be able to say, oh, okay, now, last time he tried to get me out by doing this, but he didn't. So he's probably going to try something different. And I haven't seen his such and such a pitch yet. Well, maybe this is the time when you'll. So in a sense, you see, I think what Mike Krukow said is that if you don't have the capacity to ask yourself a question, you can't supply your own answer. And so, yes, if you think you're in trouble, then yes, if you don't think you're in trouble. All right? Now, Aikido is kind of interesting because in a lot of ways, the practice is generally, if you go to a dojo, there's something that is demonstrated by the instructor, and certain things are explained about what's demonstrated. And then everybody pairs up usually. Sometimes we train in groups. And then that's practiced. And depending on where you go, there's also periods where, the actual practice becomes freer, where you can do more than one technique, or anything within a certain parameter goes. It's a more freestyle. Okay? And so that part of it is what we work with. But for example, if you're kind of new, you're kind of taught a basic movement. And then what you find is, depending on who you're working with, your results vary. Okay, so in that way, there's a certain baseline, center, ground, mind-body place you want. And then you'll kind of find that depending on who you're working with for a particular movement, your results may vary dramatically. And then you notice certain people seem not to be affected that way, which means that they're usually a black belt or an instructor or something. Okay? And so what's interesting right there is a lot of times what that person is not necessarily stronger than everybody else, but their system can integrate their information much more quickly and naturally. And so at some point they had to ask some questions to get to that level. So I guess that's what we're addressing a little bit. Now we're a little bit there. We want to get a little bit at least into some of what Osensei said. And my method is to just open a page and see what jumps out at me. Okay, so it's very scientific or unscientific. Okay, if I got to learn something, the universe says, okay, you will open to this page and look at something, and what I'm looking at. Okay, right here, we're saying, because it was highlighted, it says, Kototama are the cosmic vibrations that propel the universe. We need to shout Kototama from the floating bridge of heaven. The great god of Bu, meaning Marshall, instructed us to do so. And so what you're confronting right off the bat is that there are a couple of terms that, unless you've sort of done some research, you say, what's he talking about? So the first one is Kototama. Koto is word, speech. Tama, soul, spirit. Okay, so Osensei was very much into this system called Kototama, where certain vibrations have certain spiritual significance. And in his case, those vibrations had an effect upon our reality here. Okay? And so they were kind of like words or sounds of power. And Kototama is something that is practiced, it's more esoteric. But on the other hand, the problem is, a lot of the Aikido techniques are just jujitsu, basically. But his use of them was very different than jujitsu. And therefore, a sound system. The question is, he used the term Kototama, but did he have his own unique understanding of it? And so what we tend to do, for example, right here is to say, okay, I understand the Kototama, but do you understand his usage of the Kototama? Which might have been very different, just as his usage of the movements that basically come out of an old jujitsu tradition were very different. This is understanding of what he calls Kototama, different than the mainstream of Kototama. Okay? And we need to shout Kototama from the floating bridge of heaven. And there's another phrase that, what in the world is he talking about when he says the floating bridge of heaven? Well, the floating bridge of heaven is a place that basically God and Goddess, Izanagi, Izanami, stood to create the islands of Japan with a magical spear. And so, in some sense, in our concrete reality, that place does not exist. Okay? So one way of kind of looking at the floating bridge of heaven, there's a sense where you can do the research and you will get an answer. But he said we must shout the Kototama from the floating bridge of heaven. Well, there again is a very difficult thing. Shouting something that maybe you don't understand at all. Shout what? There's a whole system of sounds that you can get into and copy that he wrote down. But then again, there's a whole system of movements that are basically jujitsu that he did, that when he did them were not. So I guess what we're looking at right there, there's no real easy answer for those three sentences, but let's go on to the next one. Kototama emerged where the 8 thunder gods dwell, and in parentheses, the place of fierce energy. Okay, I know one thunder god, and that's Thor in the Norse mythology, because I read Marvel comics and studied a little bit of Norse mythology, and I watched Marvel movies. So there are 8. Where did he come up with that? There again, you know, I think Osensei was, it wasn't he was making this stuff up. He was really talking stream of consciousness. In other words, he was connected to a very deep place, okay? And a place where the major energies hung out, you know, I think what I would say is what Carl Jung called the archetypes. Okay? And first there were 5 seed syllables, then 7 syllables open to show the way. Okay. And in the Japanese syllabary, because, you know, he's referencing a Japanese system, even though he insisted Aikido was not Japanese. A, I, U, E, O. A, I, U, E, O. 5. Okay? And what he did in Kototama theory is not A, I, U, E, O. It's A, O, U, E, I. There's a little bit of a here. And the Japanese syllable system, Japanese alphabet, has like, I don't know, 75 sounds because, you know, K, right? We say K as a letter, but it's ka, ko, ku, ke, ki. K has 5 sounds associated with it. Or in Kototama, ka, ki, ku. Ka, ko, ku, ke, ki, not ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. So that's confusing, but he referenced things that way. And then the only ending sound is an N sound. calm time. Everything else really has, and all the other words have open sounds, except when you add an end to it. So he refers to things like the kokyu, the breath, aliveness of alpha, omega. There's a lot of ways to translate it. But how you would then take the system of movement, which, if you look at it, I mean, I have discussions with Richard Bunch, who's a jujitsu master, and he says, that's just jujitsu. And yeah, okay. You could look at cricket. You have a bat and a ball and say, that's just baseball. And you could probably say, depending on your cultural slant, I could see where you see that. But baseball and cricket have similarities, they're very different. And so, some of his stuff is very challenging. Now, if we go on, from the right, Takami Musubi appeared, establishing the 31 syllable pattern of waka, which is Japanese poetry. This is the origin of Kototama. So he's referencing right from the beginning of the universe, there was Ame no Minaka Yushi no Omikame. And then there was Takami Musubi and Kami Musubi. All right, they're kind of like a lot of times centripetal force. But you have a one, a point, a dot, and there's movement. And then there's a counter movement to that. And he goes on, let's see, study sacred scripture deeply, learn the code words, and you will come to comprehend the meaning of Shinto and other kinds of mythology. One meaning of Katsu Hayabi is to study sincerely, to discover the great truths, and to shed light on the workings of the world. So he throws still something else in. Katsu Hayabi, or Katsu Hayabi. And one thing he preached, I wasn't necessarily preaching, but he really placed a lot of importance on Masaka, Agatsu, Katsu Hayagi, or Katsu Hayabi. Masaka is true victory. Agatsu, the true victory is victory over oneself. And Katsu Hayagi, that speed which transcends time and space. Another translation, the Aikido that the human eye can't see. And still another one lurking in the background, moving at the speed of Kami, which is moving at the speed of the divine gods and goddesses. So within about 8 sentences, when he lectured, would confound people. And each of those sentences probably came out of a very, very deep study and made almost no sense to anybody else. So he's very challenging. But what I kind of get out of that is they talk a lot about, for example, the hero's journey. Okay, in other words, we are on a journey. We're here in human existence here, we're facing a lot of challenges now because of the coronavirus and the way it's being handled locally, statewide, and nationally, okay? But we're also a consciousness, a soul in creation, in the universe. And I think he saw the universe not so much as a static thing, But the universe itself was a creation that came out of something. Something that in some sense, he probably would say the one source. A lot of people would label it God. But, he was not so much a religious person, as far as I can tell. He was somebody who was a kind of scientist in a realm called the spirit. And so he's really talking about how the universe is composed. But the universe itself exists as physical matter, but we also know the physical matter is all just empty space with subatomic particles kind of zipping around. And that basically what we call empty space, because of that, is just fields of magnetism. And we assemble what we call this concrete reality, what he called the genkai, the material realm. But there was what he insisted was the yukai, the hidden realm. We can't see the subatomic particles. We can't see into other galaxies, but they're there. On the other hand, he said the blueprint of that existed in this hidden realm, which is what he called the realm of energy movement. Everything here comes out of the movement of energy. The energy doesn't move, my arm doesn't move. The standing comes out of the movement of energy. My mind and body organize the energy. So it stands. In Japanese culture, that's usually termed ki. But everything starts with an intention. I'm going to just sit here. There's no intention. I'm going to do something. All of a sudden, the concepts stand, the body sort of starts to square away, and there's a standing motion. Likewise, Kototama is sounds. Why don't we move into the other room and we will move a bit. Okay, let's, because we were talking a little bit about the Kototama, okay, but we can do a little bit. And I've done some study on it, okay. When I was in Japan in 1974, Ikizuchi Sensei actually gave a Kototama class, okay? And also, person I work with quite closely, Robert Nadeau Sensei, he received direct instruction from Osensei about sounds, okay? And just from where you are, I would recommend, you can sort of sit and watch, but even though we're going to do sounds, there's a body sense, all right? And what I'd like you to do is the first sound is ah, okay? So I'd like you to chant along with me. So we'll go on 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh. I don't know how many of you did it. It takes a little bit of courage to make the sound. And it's a little bit like it takes a bit of courage to ask a question. Let's go again. Oh. Okay, now a couple of things. You can make the sound, it's out there. Or, it's up here. Oh. So the sound It comes from inside you. And he said something like, we must shout the Kototama from the floating bridge of heaven. Okay. So if you're too timid, now where is that bridge? Good question. Maybe the sound itself, in other words, the intention to do the Kototama places you there. One of the things he said, Ame no ukihashi ni tata saseru koto. What, you must be made to stand on the floating bridge. It's not like, I'm going to stand on the floating bridge of heaven. Okay. But if you have the intention to do the sound, in other words, not just it's a Kototama sound. There may be a change kind of in the space around you. The most tangible space is the physical body. We begin to kind of feel a bit more root, ground. System starts to loosen up. If it's too tight an idea, see, that's I. All of a sudden I'm trying to be an opera singer. It's not that at all. The I sort of starts to become a bit more transparent. Okay. Anybody with an observation on the sound? David, anything? David, anything?
The different places where the sound was coming from, it was, the last time it was coming from way down in me.
Yeah. Okay.
And it wasn't because I was forcing it down, it's just that's where I felt it starting from.
Yeah. See, there's an area where, for example, where is that floating bridge? The floating bridge is, to some degree, speculation, anywhere where you have the intention to make this sound as Kototama. And what you'll kind of find is that it's more of an interior sound. Okay. Anybody else with an observation on the sound?
Sensei, I noticed when I started it and it was getting the, I guess, tone that you had and held that resonance, the volume just naturally kept increasing and I could feel it more and more.
Yeah, see what he said, we need to shout the Kototama. I don't think he meant, shout it out. It's just, See, if I start to do that sound, all of a sudden the body starts to become much more active. And I'm beginning to feel almost like there's a field around me that the sound is bringing out. So the volume will naturally increase. Conversely, you don't feel like shouting it out. It's the intention. Okay, all right, yes. In other words, there's a couple of people that were training in Tokyo, and they kind of were practicing the Kototama, and the subway in Tokyo. And guess what? The crowds parted like the Red Sea. So I wouldn't recommend, for example, doing that. Do it in a good place. Okay. In other words, everybody's in social isolation right now, so it's. Anybody else with an observation about the sound? Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm a singer,
Yes.
so it's the same kind of thing we do when we sing.
Okay.
You sing with your whole body and you project and you resonate, and it goes from here down to here. And it's a very musical thing.
Okay. Yeah. I would put it this way, but what he's really talking about in terms of Kototama, and I think Hikizuchi Sensei said this once, music comes from Kototama. But on the other hand, motion also comes from Kototama. For example, if I was going to go, I'm going to do a turn. You could argue that the motion itself comes out of the sound. Now, that's speculation. What comes first, chicken or egg? Sound or movement? And to some degree, it's probably very, very individual, and also the depth of the individual. But yeah, music. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Well, let's move on, and we'll try the O sound. Ready? Which you may find is that, the ah sound for me is kind of more of an opening. The O is more of a deepening. So try it. If you haven't, try it. Of course, breath and sound are related. If you don't breathe, you can't produce a sound. But I find, for example, with the sound, the breath starts to organize itself much more. If you go, and run out, you're not doing this, pumping yourself up. Let's go one more. Okay. And I'm kind of curious, anybody notice a difference? Ah to O, David, anything?
I'm getting a feeling of something coming up and supporting my body from underneath.
Yeah, the O sound is kind of ah, O, yeah, okay, good. Anybody else?
Sensei, you mentioned the A for you is the opening and O deepening. For me, I think the A felt like an expanding and the O a settling. So I think same thing, just.
Yeah, in other words, the depth, settle, roots. deep, deep, deep earth, deep ground, deep ocean. Yeah. Okay.
Sensei, I have a question perhaps. So I feel like if I go lower in pitch, that I feel more, grounded, lower, a higher pitch. I'm a little higher. So should we be feeling the same things, whether we go in low in pitch or higher in pitch?
Well, you see, a lot of that is tricky because you just gotta experiment. You see what I mean? Now, for example, the O sound, there's a documentary. No, actually, it was, it was like in that, this was what, 60s? They would have these TV shows about people traveling. And there's a guy named Lee Green who shot Lee Green's Rendezvous with Adventure. And it was coinciding with the opening of the Tokyo Tower. So they go to Tokyo to that opening, but they're gonna, as a side thing for the program, they're going to go see what Aikido is. And so they just stop by for a little bit, and then they go, it's like a combination of jujitsu and gymnastics, so nothing here. So they go to the Tokyo Tower, right? And they're kind of going, this is the Tokyo Tower. And then one of the crew members is looking at this Aikido book that was for sale, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. It's probably Japanese about Osensei, about Ueshiba. So he goes up to Lee Green and says, we missed the whole point of Aikido because we didn't see Ueshiba. And so they go back, and Osensei is, probably late 70s, right? And early 80s. I can't remember the exact date that was shot. And so, they're kind of in his presence, so they kind of begin to kind of feel there's something going on. So for whatever reason, one of them asks through an interpreter, could he give us the word in Aikido? And in some sense, the word may be also, in this culture, what you might call the Kototama. And so, Osensei looks at the interpreter and says, "Ima kara yarimasu." Says, okay, I'll do it right now. And when he does the O sound, he uses a spiral up and a spiral down. Okay. That's a long, sustained note, but it's an attention grabber. And I remember seeing that documentary, then I started practicing that sound. And there was somebody else who was into it, the chanting and stuff. And it's kind of interesting that her immediate reaction to that was it was kind of scary because it was such an opening sound. So we were picking up the O as kind of a deepening ground, but that same sound can move up and back down. And apparently, Osensei used that sound quite a bit. In fact, Hikizuchi Sensei used to, he was taught certain things by Osensei, and he used the O sound quite a bit. So whether you work it as just simply the, just increasing the pitch or low. I think for basics, you know, you kind of work it more, you'll notice it more as the deeper element. But, you know, the movement, and I've seen Osensei also. When he has a spear, that's probably O right there. Anybody else with a question? Okay, let's see. Let's see. We'll go back, and we're checking time here. Whoops. Yes. Okay. So to O. The other thing we can do is really do them in as a combination sound. So let's try that. So I naturally form this kind of mudra when I do that. So and that's all lining up here. So you can do the sound out there. Okay, let's do one more. Back to the center, but from the center, out, back to the center, boom. Okay. Anybody with any observations when we kind of practice both sounds together?
And say just that they naturally flowed together in the way that you showed. They felt like they were meant to be together.
Yeah, in other words, you can do this. You can go, oh, you can make a ritual practice form out of it. But it's even without the sound, the movement is imbued with something. You might want to try this one. In other words, no sound, but we've been doing sound. Okay. So you see, we can start it out as gymnastics or warm-up exercises, but anybody with an observation, the movement without the sound, but having done the sound?
I could kind of feel the sound happening anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Osensei would do sounds when he was doing movement, but on the other hand, the sounds take you to a deeper, finer place. Okay. Okay. Yeah. In other words, you know, even though your sounds are going on, even when you're not outwardly creating them, those energies that ah and o express through you are more than just something you mouth in the moment. Anybody else?
When we were doing that last time without the actual sound, I just became aware of how much just the impulse was clearing my body. It was just clear now, so that things were free to move up and down.
Yeah.
And like the alignment was settling. I just became aware of that. It had been happening and I wasn't sort of noticing it, but just taking the sound away from it, suddenly I'm aware that this whole thing is just, everything's kind of arranging itself more in line. And at the end, that's...
Well, you know, one thing I found kind of interesting is that, you know, there's another Stevens book. I should go back to the dojo and get it. It's translated as, I think it's The Heart of Aikido or something. But it's a series of lectures that Osensei did at a religious society. He had a friend named Masahisa Goi. They say peace prevails on earth, you know, with those poles and stuff. But what it was one of the last chapters. Osensei was talking about what he calls his prayer time. Okay, and how if he didn't do it, the day was ruined. But another perspective on that, he had an 80-some-odd-year-old body, but he would get up and do some version of this every day. He said he could still function without that prayer time, but he said he didn't do it. He said that, yeah. So right about here, just check your body out. You know, we're all going to age, but all of a sudden there's a different force or power that can begin to animate us. If you watch him, he moves much more like a very younger man than he does a 70, 80-year-old in the videos. In fact, one time I remember one of my very early years in Aikido, I was in a class with Frank Duran Sensei, and he brought some Osensei. They were movies in those days, no videos. And so his comment to the class is, wow, just being able to move like that at that age, wouldn't that be neat? So if you just sort of try some movements, Boom. We've been doing some sound. Try a movement. You might try it on your own, but you know, pick up something and try a cut. Boom. Try a series of moves. Boom. 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 So, you know, we can talk about it, but you see, the whole thing is the Kototama, you know, the soul speech. And, you know, there's mind, and there's body, and their integration, but soul over mind coming up through the body. On some level, might have been what Osensei was talking about. We can unify soul, original consciousness that we are, mind, body. You might have a pretty good definition of standing on that floating bridge. Okay? All right, since we're continuing to move on, let's go into the oo sound. Now, the oo sound is interesting because you get you get oh, ooh. Okay? So let's just start with the oo sound, then we'll integrate. Ready? Okay. Anybody with a sense on that? It's a different sound. We're talking about the chakras, right? In immediate prior classes, U is a different dimension. Ah, O dimensions. Oo. Anybody with oo? Anybody?
Just the obvious that it's a different part of the body.
Which part?
Lower down than the ah.
Okay.
It may be sort of in between the ah and the o.
Yeah. Interior.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I re-
Anybody else? Could be the same thing, or you might have a different experience. It's the whole thing. I gotta fit in with the group. Yeah, but what's happening for you?
I really feel it through my sternum, through the here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
I sense I felt it also lung sternum, but more close to the center, more close to the entire center. So
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's all kind of in the same vein, much, more or less. Everybody has their own unique slant. Okay? Everybody has their own unique slant. If somebody says this is the way it is, then what happens is people tend to make something that's very profound too rigid. It loses its focus, its power, its vitalness. Anybody else? Okay. Well, since they apparently really like the oo sound, the way that he put it, the oo, caused his red blood cells to boil. And heat, light, and strength, kind of from the interior out. And his son wrote a biography of his dad. And he said that, maybe not commonly known, but Osensei had some real health challenges, stomach, liver problems his whole life. And so what he would say is sometimes they were supposed to do a demo or something. His father would be like this. And then all of a sudden, he's like this. And he'd go, And then his son said, and we did that, and all of a sudden he could feel his father's power, strength, and vitalness starting to return with that sound. So Osensei really liked that sound, ooh. Like, for example, uki, hashi, floating bridge. All right. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. Let's see. Just do a quick ah to o to ooh. Okay. Let me. Yeah. Sometimes as you practice the sound, for example, you get a oh, and that sound repeats on itself. Oh. So you get, get kind of in music, it's kind of like a vibrato effect. Okay. But it's not, like when I was playing the trumpet initially, I learned to kind of, most trumpeters kind of do this to get the vibrato. And then the guy I was studying with, which was very mixed, he was kind of, somebody played in Las Vegas and could hit double, triple C and everything like that. But he taught me to do it kind of with, right. And then I started listening to Chet Baker. And Baker, most people say, doesn't use vibrato. But what he does do, he bends the sounds. And so, you get the out, and then his echo repeating on itself, and they dance together. If you watch Osensei chant, oh, not a oh vibrato, but a oh. See, certain movements, boom, they're kind of not just the form of it and not just the energy of it going out, but it repeating on itself. Kojima Sensei's up and down, but he had the rebeat, boom. The cut that we saw was not just the up and the down of the cut, it was the cut repeating on itself. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So, Osensei talked about what he called the mountain echo, where you pray to the universe, you bow to the universe bows back. And that's one of the things that Osensei talked about as part of the Kototama experience. But let's try the ah, oh to ooh one more time. Oh. Oh. Okay. So we're right about at 1 o'clock. So just briefly before we go, of course, it can last as long as it lasts. So Anybody, just check the feel of your body out after the sound. Just move, because we've done something different than we normally do. And anybody, how's your body feel? Is it the same? Is it different? If it's different, how is it different?
Well, I feel like I'm certainly more aware of the inside of my body.
Yeah, okay.
You know, normally I'm kind of focused on the outside, but I'm more aware of the inside of the body.
Well, I think that's an important one because the whole world pulls your attention out. And so, you know, the sounds, if they can kind of get you a little bit more into yourself. See, when the thing pulled out, we're much more in the world of I, right? And the more we kind of interiorize our experience of ourselves, the more we're going from I to self. So, for me, that's a good feeling. Okay, anybody else?
I'm more
I
aware
feel
of the weight of my
more
body.
fluid.
Okay, let's go one at a time. So,
David first.
okay, David.
Okay. I'm more aware of the weight of my body, but I don't feel heavier.
Yeah, the Tohei Sensei called it weight underside. It doesn't mean you drop your weight and set. Yeah. Okay. Depth. The O dimension. That O dimension coming up as ooh through you without losing kind of the larger picture of the ah. And so what you'll find is your movement integrates. Boom, 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 integrates. Okay, right? Anybody else? Cliff?
Yeah, actually, well, what I was going to say was that I feel more fluid, like less creaky when I move.
Yeah.
Not like getting up and I'm stiff first thing in the morning and creaky or whatever. I'm more, but what David said made me also think about that I feel not so much weighty as like weight underside, more like I can feel my mass. Like if now I want to suddenly go up to this International Space Station and do Aikido and microgravity because I think there would be an experience to be had there.
Okay.
Like without gravity, without weight, but with mass in a fluid kind of way.
Yeah, well, see, mass, weight is just mass in a particular field of gravitation. So you don't lose mass wherever you are. The other thing is matter and energy are basically supposedly about the same on a lot of levels. Okay. In fact, Osensei called that spirit matter. Okay, he just said spirit matter, matter spirit. Boom. We're in a material world, but we're also spirit in that material world. And he could work a reversal because we're weighed down by the material, but in his particular thing, the spiritual came through the material. That was his Aikido, as far as I can tell. And, you know, how do we get there? Well, we begin to stand on the floating bridge of heaven. You can use sound. You can use motion. You can swing a sword a couple of times. And if you want to swing a sword for 2 hours, you can. I don't, but you know. You can get up in the morning and if you feel self-conscious because you're living with other people, see the ah sound expands, goes out in a circle. O sound expands, goes out in a circle. What's a different circle? Ooh sound expands, goes out in a circle, but it's a different circle. We didn't get to the A and the E, but a lot of that is just exploration. And what Cliff was saying a little bit is, okay, Cliff, all of a sudden you're 80 years old. It's an 80-year-old body, but you might have the key to being and moving and, you know, seemingly in a much younger or youthful way, you see? So, anyway, anybody else before we go? Okay, all right. I think a good session today. I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. The sounds, we did some chakra drumming, but that's also beat, boom, 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 boom. There's a real connection between sound and rhythm. Okay. For example, so I asked Ikizuchi Sensei once. I said, you know, in Japanese, I remember it was ongaku to kototama. Do you relationship ga arimasu ka? And he said, he looked at me, what's the relationship between music and kototama? And he looked at me and says, beato, which means beat, rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. See, as far as I can tell, Sensei had his own ritual pattern, but it wasn't like okay, I'm going to do this every day to be holy. It was like, maybe, ooh. And then we didn't get into because without the vowel sounds, you can't have a language. Okay. But you know, one of the things as you're starting to do movements like this, you know, you start to get the feeling that, you know, just as the sound sort of exists, apart from your mouthing the sound, you know, you're kind of in a series of breezes or winds, energies moving. All right, and each of them, you know, has a type of a song. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. And that's to me the Kototama experience in motion. There's a rhythm or beat, boom. But those are 1, 2, 3. They're like 3 different, that wind, that wind, that wind. Boom, boom, boom. And those winds go on in here, and each of those winds in here and out there have a song they sing. And when you can switch from song to song or note to note, you know, you generate maybe a little bit of what Osensei called, and at his level, the Takemusu Aiki. And then, of course, you know, that can also be the case if you're doing a movement with a partner. Okay, so that's my thing. You know, I do play music, okay, but if I look at somebody like Chet Baker, you know, you have your scale of notes. You have a particular beat. Okay, now within that beat, you can slice that beat up into, you know, like 1 note, half notes, quarter notes, da da da, or da 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 dee. And then you add the height and depth, da 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 dee do da da. And it all comes out of breath, vibration, going into sound. A musician produces notes. Osensei produced motion. Okay, so there's a lot of things that start to kind of add up together because I really like the music. I'm going through a lot of angst about the coronavirus. I go in there and I play some notes and it shifts. All of a sudden I find balance here, the air column, And if I'm off, then you're going to realign. And okay. So anyway, we're all coping. I hope this gives everybody, because there are dimensions of self, I, going the and the O opens that up. Ooh, starts to give you more of a interior experience. I is out there. And then boom is kind of where the winds start. Well, Sensei said A-E, but he double counted. Was and E, but it was Igi, Igi, So a lot of his movements, but he had the the O, and the U before it went to Okay, so that's a little lecture. I don't know, but some of the stuff you got to play around with, right? Most of the time, I mean, I had a Kototama lesson in 1974. Before then, I used to go to workshops that Robert Fraser and Robert Nadeau senseis taught. We did sound. Okay, in Japan. Believe it or not, other than the fact there was that Kototama class, very little was done. And Hikizuchi Sensei, every once in a while, he would do his morning prayers, and he'd turn around to me and says, Jack, produce the Kototama. And I have to come up with, or something like that. I realized after a while I didn't come up with it, I get bawled out. So I would just shout something out and go, because it was that sense you're on the spot, but instead of, you let the sound emerge from you, okay? And, I still do probably more than hanging out with the individual sounds. I do kind of the sacred Shinto prayers. When the sensei did them, were Kototama. And we're not going to sit here and do it for 15 minutes, so, okay. But he spent a lot of time going through those prayers as a part of his prayer time. Okay, meditation time, whatever you want to call it. Okay, thank you all for tuning in today.